Evan Corwin lived on the edge of the galaxy, far from crowded star systems and busy spaceports. His small house sat alone on a rocky plain under pale green skies, where silence ruled most nights. He liked it that way. Life was simple. He grew his own food, repaired his ship, and spent evenings reading old star maps or watching the faint glow of distant planets. But this night, something unusual happened. A soft noise drifted through the air. At first, Evan thought it was the wind, moving over the jagged rocks. Then he heard it again, clearer this time, a small, high-pitched cry, like a child lost in the dark. Curiosity pulled him outside. The cold night air hit his face as he stepped onto the porch. At the edge of the light, he saw them, 3 tiny dragons, no bigger than his arm. Their scales shimmered faintly in shades of blue and gold, and their eyes, wide with fear, looked at him with a strange mix of hope and confusion. Evan froze for a moment. He had read about dragons in old stories, in books that spoke of distant galaxies and legendary creatures. But he had never expected to meet any, and certainly not little babies, trembling under his porch light. The smallest one made a tiny, sad whimper. Instinctively, Evan knelt and held out his hands. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe here." The dragons seemed to sense his kindness. Slowly, they crawled toward him, brushing against his hands and shoulders. Evan could feel their warmth and the gentle rise and fall of their tiny chests. He brought them inside, laying soft blankets on the floor. He had never cared for creatures like this before, but something in their eyes made him want to protect them. One by one, he fed them small bits of protein from his supplies, watching as their tiny tails twitched in excitement. Their warmth spread through the room, filling the small house with a strange, comforting energy. Evan smiled, feeling a connection he did not understand. Days passed, and Evan began to learn the dragons' little ways. They were playful and curious, chasing small floating orbs of light he made with a projector. They liked soft songs, and when Evan hummed quietly, they would curl up near him and close their eyes. Each night, he tucked them into blankets, making sure they felt safe. At first, he wondered if anyone would ever come looking for them. He did not know that their mother, a mighty queen, ruled not a planet, but an entire galaxy. One night, while Evan was reading to them, a sudden flash of light appeared outside. He rushed to the window but saw nothing but the usual stars twinkling in the distance. The dragons, however, twitched nervously. They hissed softly, small sparks of fire dancing from their tiny mouths. Evan touched them gently, calming them. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to be afraid. Not here." But he could not shake the feeling that they were not ordinary creatures, and that their presence here was only the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. Evan tried to ask the dragons where they came from, but they did not speak words. Instead, they used small images and feelings, projecting moments of flight over glowing cities, enormous ships moving through starlit skies, and a powerful presence that watched over them constantly. Evan did not fully understand, but he felt awe and fear in equal measure. These little dragons were connected to something vast and powerful. Despite the danger he sensed, Evan cared for them more each day. He gave them names: Lumo, Fira, and Cinder. Lumo was the boldest, always climbing to the highest shelves. Fira was gentle and shy, curling up under his arm when the wind howled outside. Cinder was playful, darting around the room and often making small sparks that left burn marks on the floorboards. Evan had to be careful, but he enjoyed every moment. The dragons were not just creatures, they were family. Word of strange lights and small dragons began to spread to the nearby settlements, though slowly. Traders passing by whispered about Evan's house, saying that the man had taken in magical creatures from the stars. Some were curious, some afraid. But Evan did not care what others thought. He was happy in the small, quiet moments, watching the dragons sleep, feeding them, and listening to the soft crackle of their tiny fires. One morning, as Evan cleaned the floor after a particularly energetic night of play, he noticed something unusual. The dragon's scales glowed more brightly than usual, shimmering in colors that shifted like liquid light. When he touched them, he felt a faint hum, as if a small pulse of energy ran through his hand. He paused, realizing that these creatures were extraordinary. They were not just babies lost in space, they carried something of the stars within them. That evening, Evan sat with the dragons tucked under his arms and looked up at the sky. A feeling of both peace and unease filled him. He did not know who had sent these creatures to him or why, but he knew one thing: for now, they belonged together. He whispered promises he hoped he could keep. "I'll protect you. No one will hurt you here." The dragons nuzzled him in return, tiny sparks of warmth flickering against his skin. The first night ended in silence. Outside, the The stars burned cold and distant, but inside Evan's small home, there was warmth, light, and trust. For the first time in his life, he understood the power of simple care. A human, alone on a quiet planet, had become the guardian of creatures that could change the course of the galaxy. He did not know the adventures ahead, or the challenges that would come, but he knew that these tiny dragons had chosen him, and that he could never turn away from them. And so, Evan Corwin, ordinary man on an ordinary planet, spent his first night as the protector of 3 extraordinary beings. He tucked them into their soft blankets, whispered soft stories, and watched them sleep. The universe beyond was vast and unknown, but here, in the quiet of his small home, a human and 3 dragon babies had found something rare: trust, love, and a beginning that would echo across the stars. Evan woke early the next morning to the soft chirping sounds of the dragons. Lumo, Fira, and Cinder had already started exploring the house, their tiny claws tapping softly on the floor. Evan smiled, watching them. He had never felt such a mix of joy and responsibility. They were so small and vulnerable, yet somehow, their presence made the house feel alive, warm, and full of energy. He prepared breakfast for them, carefully mixing protein cubes with a few drops of water. As he fed them, Lumo pressed his tiny head against Evan's hand, eyes full of trust. Fira curled up on his shoulder, letting out a quiet purr, and Cinder darted around, curious about everything. Evan laughed, careful to keep the energetic one from knocking over his tools. Every day, he discovered new things about them. Lumo seemed clever, solving small puzzles and learning quickly. Fira was sensitive, reacting to the smallest changes in Evan's tone or expression. Cinder was brave and playful, exploring places he was not supposed to go. Over time, Evan noticed that the dragons could communicate in strange ways. They did not speak, but he could sense their thoughts through feelings and images. Lumo showed him flashes of vast cities built from crystal and metal, where dragons of every size flew in perfect harmony. Fira projected soft images of gardens floating in space, full of light and warmth. Cinder, in his mischievous way, showed playful visions of stars twinkling like toys. Evan could not understand all of it, but he felt the connection grow stronger each day. The dragons also began to show small magical abilities. Sparks of fire danced from their mouths when they were excited. Their scales shimmered in colors that shifted with their emotions, glowing softly when they were happy or scared. One night, Evan noticed that their wings, tiny and fragile, would twitch as if they wanted to fly. He realized that they were not ordinary creatures, they carried a part of the stars within them. He could feel the energy humming through the room, a vibration that made the air feel alive. Evan spent hours teaching them simple things. He showed them how to climb safely on shelves, how to balance on narrow beams, and how to respond to his voice. Slowly, they began to understand simple commands. Lumo would come when called, Fira would curl up and stay calm when told, and Cinder would stop darting around when Evan raised his hand. It was remarkable how quickly they learned. Each small success made Evan proud and deepened their bond. The dragons also seemed to understand the concept of care. When Evan was tired, Fira would nuzzle him gently. Lumo would curl up near his hands, and even mischievous Cinder would rest beside him, letting Evan relax for a few moments. At night, as he tucked them into blankets, he felt a sense of peace. They trusted him completely, and in return, he trusted them. In this quiet connection, Evan realized something profound. Humans and dragons, though very different, could understand each other in ways that mattered most, through love and care. As the days went on, Evan began to notice that their presence caused small, unusual events. Tools would levitate slightly, lights flickered, and sometimes tiny sparks of energy danced across the walls. At first, he was alarmed, but he soon realized it was the dragons, their emotions and energy interacting with the world around them. It was strange but beautiful. It made him feel that the universe was noticing them, that their bond was bigger than just a man and 3 small creatures. One afternoon, Evan took them outside to the rocky plains. The dragons had never seen so much open space. Lumo ran ahead, wings flapping just enough to hover above the ground. Fira stayed close to Evan, watching the horizon nervously. Cinder bounced and leaped over small rocks, leaving trails of tiny sparks. Evan laughed, feeling a mix of wonder and worry. The dragons were learning, exploring, and growing, and he was there to guide them. During these outings, Evan began to notice that the dragons were learning from him in ways he never expected. They copied his movements, watched his expressions, and responded to his emotions. When Evan showed patience, they became calm. When he showed courage, they tried to act brave. It was as if they were absorbing human traits, small but powerful, that even the stars could not teach them. At night, When the dragons were asleep in their soft blankets, Evan looked up at the sky. He felt a strange connection between the tiny creatures in his home and the vast galaxies above. He could sense a presence watching them, something powerful, something ancient. He did not yet understand who or what it was, but he knew it was related to the dragons. He shivered, realizing that their little adventures were only the beginning of something much bigger. One night, the dragons had a dream, and Evan felt it as though it were his own. He saw flashes of enormous ships gliding through space, bright stars passing by at impossible speeds, and a regal figure watching over the babies with a presence that demanded respect. He awoke, heart racing, understanding that their mother was not just any dragon, she ruled the stars, and she would come for them. The thought was frightening, yet Evan did not feel fear. Instead, he felt determination. He had raised them, nurtured them, and taught them love. He would protect them, no matter what challenges came from the galaxy. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Evan and the dragons grew stronger. They laughed together, explored together, and learned together. The dragons were no longer scared or timid, they trusted him completely. And Evan, in turn, had discovered something he never thought possible. That humans, though small and fragile in a vast universe, could shape the hearts of powerful beings. He understood that his care, patience, and love had created a bridge between worlds. The moment came one quiet evening when Lumo curled up on his chest, Fira rested on his shoulder, and Cinder nestled at his feet. Evan felt their warmth, their trust, and their bond. He knew that no matter what the galaxy held, this connection was real, strong, and unbreakable. He whispered softly, "We'll face whatever comes together." The dragons purred and shimmered in reply, tiny sparks lighting the room like starlight. Evan realized that he had learned as much from them as they had learned from him. Love, trust, and care were not just human traits, they were universal, powerful, and capable of shaping the course of even the most distant stars. And in the quiet of his small house, on a quiet planet far from the center of the galaxy, a human and 3 dragon babies shared a bond that would echo across worlds. The universe beyond was vast, mysterious, and full of danger. But inside Evan's house, there was warmth, light, and understanding. And that was enough, for now, to prepare them for whatever the stars had planned next. Evan had grown used to the dragon's presence. Every morning, the house rang with the soft pitter-patter of tiny claws, the gentle hissing of sparks, and the quiet laughter of creatures learning the world. But one evening, as he was feeding Lumo, Fira, and Cinder, the sky outside shifted. Stars that were usually calm flickered, and a strange hum filled the air. The dragon stiffened, ears twitching and eyes wide. Evan had never seen them act this way. Something was coming. Before he could understand, a bright beam of light shot down from the sky, landing just outside his house. Evan shielded his eyes, feeling warmth and energy ripple through the air. The dragons hissed nervously, curling close to him. The light formed into a holographic figure, immense and regal, unlike anything Evan had ever seen. Scales that shimmered like polished metal, eyes glowing with power, wings that spanned across the projection. It was a dragon, but larger than anything in his imagination. "I am Queen Lyris," the figure said, her voice echoing in the small house. "These are my children. You have kept them without my consent. Return them immediately, or face consequences you cannot understand." Her tone was strong and commanding, but there was also a trace of worry. Evan felt his heart pound. This was the mother of the dragon babies, the being whose power stretched across galaxies. He realized how small and fragile he must seem to her. Evan's mind raced. He could not just hand them over. He had raised them, cared for them, and loved them as his own. But he knew he was in no position to fight against such power. He took a deep breath, keeping his voice calm. "I have not harmed them," he said. "I have fed them, kept them safe, and given them love. They trust me, and I trust them." The dragons reacted instantly. Lumo and Cinder leaned toward Evan, nudging him gently with their heads. Fira pressed closer, letting out a small, calming hum. Evan realized the mother could sense their bond. Queen Lyris paused, observing them. The energy in the room shifted. Sparks from the dragons danced in the air, their small flames flickering brighter as though reacting to the tension. "You do not understand the power they carry," Lyris warned. "They are not simple creatures. Their abilities can influence worlds, their presence can change life across star systems. You cannot control them, and you cannot protect them from the dangers they bring. I demand their return." Evan felt a chill run down his spine. He had always known the dragons were extraordinary, but hearing it from their mother made it real. Evan knelt closer to the babies, looking into their eyes. They blinked slowly, sending him images and feelings. He could see flashes of their home world, massive ships gliding through space, cities glowing under alien suns. He felt their trust, their love, and their fear. They did not want to leave him, and Evan knew he could not betray that trust. "I understand their power," he said slowly. "And I respect it. But I also know something you may not see. They have learned kindness, trust, and love from me. I will not harm them, and I will continue to protect them. Not out of fear, but out of care." The holographic queen studied him in silence. Her glowing eyes softened slightly, though her expression remained serious. The dragons reacted in unexpected ways. Lumo nudged the projection of his mother as if asking for permission to stay. Fira pressed her face against Evan's shoulder, showing no fear of the queen's voice. Cinder flared tiny sparks, the room brightening with his energy. Evan realized then that the bond he had formed with them was powerful enough to be felt across distances, even reaching the mother. Lyris lowered her wings slightly, the first sign of hesitation. "You are human," she said quietly, almost to herself. "And yet, you have raised my children without greed or cruelty. You have cared for them with patience that few beings, even among the stars, can match. This is unusual." Her words hung in the air. Evan felt hope. Even a queen of the stars could sense the value of care. But the warning remained. "Do not mistake my hesitation for weakness," she continued. "The galaxy watches these children. Other powers will not forgive mistakes. You must prepare, human. Your actions have consequences beyond this planet." Evan's stomach tightened. He had never thought about the larger galaxy noticing his small acts. Yet here he was, standing on a quiet plain with 3 tiny dragons, facing one of the most powerful beings in the universe. The queen's image flickered, then grew larger, filling the room with her presence. "I will allow them to remain with you, for now," she said. "But you must understand, your care alone will not protect them forever. The stars themselves can be dangerous to those who are unprepared." Evan nodded, swallowing hard. He could feel the weight of her words, and he knew she was right. His love for the dragons was strong, but the universe was unpredictable, and threats could come from places he could not even imagine. As the hologram faded, the dragons huddled close to Evan. Their warmth was a comfort, their tiny bodies pulsing with life and trust. He realized that the bond they shared was not just about survival, it was about connection, empathy, and courage. These small creatures, who depended on him, were teaching him as much as he was teaching them. He could feel the pull of the galaxy, the larger challenges that awaited, but for now, they were together, safe and cared for. Evan looked up at the sky, thinking about the queen and the vast empire she commanded. The stars were no longer distant points of light, they were part of a larger story, a story in which he was now deeply involved. The dragons stirred, nudging him, as if sensing his thoughts. He smiled and stroked Lumo's head. "We'll be ready," he whispered. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." That night, as he tucked the dragons into their soft blankets, the air still hummed with a faint energy left behind by the queen. Evan felt both fear and determination. He had entered a game far bigger than himself, but he also knew that his care, patience, and love had earned him a place in it. The dragons trusted him, and now, the galaxy had noticed. Outside, the stars shimmered brighter than usual, as if watching, waiting, and acknowledging the courage of one human who had chosen to love creatures that could rule worlds. And in that quiet house, on a quiet planet at the edge of everything known, Evan, Lumo, Fira, and Cinder settled into sleep, hearts connected and ready for the challenges the stars might send next. The night sky was quiet at first, but then a faint shimmer appeared far above Evan's house. He noticed it while feeding the dragons. Lumo, Fira, and Cinder were playing quietly, but even they paused, sensing something in the air. The shimmer grew brighter, forming streaks of light that cut across the sky like stars falling from heaven. Evan's heart raced. He had seen the Queen's projection before, but this felt different. The galaxy itself was arriving at his doorstep. Suddenly, a massive ship appeared, hovering above the rocky plains. It was enormous, sleek, and shining with polished metal that reflected the starlight. Smaller ships flanked it, forming a fleet that glowed like constellations brought down to the planet. Evan's mouth went dry. The stories the dragons had shown him, the ones of vast cities and mighty starships, were real, and they were here. A beam of light extended from the largest ship, and the air vibrated with energy. The dragons pressed close to Evan, their small bodies shaking slightly. Sparks of fire flickered from Cinder's tiny mouth as if reacting to the overwhelming presence. Evan held them gently. "It's okay," he whispered. "We'll face this together." His voice was calm, but inside, he felt a storm of fear and anticipation. A figure appeared in the beam of light, landing softly on the ground. Evan's eyes widened. It was Queen Lyris, but this time, she was real, not a projection. Her scales glimmered with shifting colors, and her wings, wide and strong, created a small wind that rustled the rocks. Her eyes, glowing like distant suns, fixed on Evan and the dragons. She radiated power, but there was something else, curiosity. "You have cared for my children," she said, her voice deep but not harsh. "I have come to see if your words are true." Evan stepped forward slowly, keeping the dragons close. Lumo nudged him, and he patted its head. Fira blinked, and Cinder sent a tiny spark into the air, playful but careful. Evan realized that the babies trusted him, even now, and that gave him courage. "I have," he said clearly. "I have fed them, kept them safe, and loved them. I did not take them to harm or use. I only wanted to care for them." Lyris tilted her head slightly, studying him. The dragons responded immediately. Lumo climbed onto Evan's shoulder, Fira pressed close, and Cinder circled around, playful yet protective. The queen's eyes softened slightly as she observed them. The tension in the air was heavy. Evan could feel the energy of the queen, the ships above, and the dragons themselves. He knew that one wrong move could spark conflict, but he also knew he could not abandon the babies. He straightened his back, holding his ground. "They trust me," he said. "And I trust them. I will not betray that bond." Lyris studied him in silence. Then, slowly, she lowered her wings, the first sign of approval. "Humans are fragile," she said softly, "but sometimes, they possess a courage and kindness that even the stars cannot teach. You have earned my attention, Evan Corwin." He felt a mixture of relief and pride, but he did not relax. The galaxy was here, and their presence could still be dangerous. Suddenly, a warning came from the fleet above. Other ships began scanning the planet, sending pulses of energy that could detect life forms, threats, or potential power. Evan held the dragons closer. He could feel their hearts beating rapidly. Lyris raised her claws, creating a shield of shimmering light around them. "They are safe with me," she said to the fleet above. The pulses stopped. Evan realized that the queen's respect for him was not just words, she was protecting them in front of the entire galaxy. Evan spent the next hours showing the queen how he cared for the dragons. He fed them, played with them, and even demonstrated the small lessons he had taught them: climbing, balance, listening, and responding to his voice. Lyris observed quietly, her massive eyes reflecting surprise and something like admiration. "You have done what many cannot," she said finally. "You have taught them trust, love, and care. These are traits not even my best tutors could instill." The dragons responded, glowing softly as if sensing the queen's approval. Lumo chirped happily, Fira purred, and Cinder sent small, controlled sparks into the air. Evan laughed quietly, feeling a warmth spread through him. He realized that even in the presence of a being who ruled stars, his simple acts of care had value. They were small, human, but extraordinary in their own way. But the queen's voice grew serious again. "The galaxy is not always kind. Others will see the children's power and may wish to claim it. You must be vigilant. Your care alone will not always be enough to protect them." Evan nodded, understanding the truth in her words. Danger could come at any time, but he had learned that courage, care, and trust could meet it head-on. For the first time, the dragons lifted their tiny wings, fluttering weakly but confidently. They had learned from Evan, and now, in the presence of their mother, they were showing their strength. Evan realized that the bond he shared with them had shaped them as much as they had shaped him. They were ready to face the galaxy together, not as small creatures and a lone human, but as a family. Lyris studied them once more, then spread her wings wide. "I will leave you for now," she said. "But remember, the galaxy watches. You have proven worthy, human, but the future will test you. Protect them well." With that, she rose into the air, followed by the fleet. The lights of the ships faded into the distance, leaving Evan and the dragons alone once more. Evan exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and responsibility. The dragons nuzzled him, sensing his emotions. Lumo rested on his shoulder, Fira curled against his chest, and Cinder twined around his legs, tiny sparks flickering with contentment. Evan realized that the galaxy had arrived, that powerful forces had acknowledged him, and that the bond he shared with these creatures had become more than a connection. It had become a shield, a strength, and a lesson. That night, as he tucked the dragons into their soft blankets, Evan looked at the stars. The sky seemed larger now, alive with distant lights, unseen cities, and ships gliding silently through space. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also the warmth of love and trust. He had learned something remarkable: even in a universe vast and dangerous, simple acts of care could create strength beyond measure. And so, on a quiet planet under shifting stars, Evan Corwin, Lumo, Fira, and Cinder slept peacefully, connected not just by trust and love, but by the knowledge that the galaxy itself had noticed, and that whatever came next, they would face it together. The morning after the Queen and her fleet left, Evan awoke to the quiet hum of his small house. Lumo, Fira, and Cinder were already awake, their tiny bodies stretching and shimmering in the sunlight that filtered through the windows. Evan smiled. Despite the events of the night, the dragons were calm, their trust in him unshaken. He realized that their bond had grown stronger after meeting their mother, not weaker. He prepared breakfast for them, carefully mixing protein cubes with water and sprinkling tiny crystals that the dragons seemed to enjoy. Lumo chirped excitedly, nudging Evan's hand for more. Fira curled on his shoulder, purring softly, and Cinder bounced around, leaving faint sparks on the floor. Evan laughed quietly. Their small joys reminded him that, no matter how large the galaxy or powerful the beings within it, simple care and love mattered the most. Word spread slowly through nearby settlements about what had happened. Travelers who had seen the fleet spoke in whispers of a human who had faced a dragon queen without fear and cared for her children. Some were amazed, others skeptical, but everyone agreed on one thing: Evan had done something extraordinary. He had not fought with weapons or threats. He had protected the dragons with his heart, his patience, and his kindness. As the days passed, the dragons began to test their abilities more openly. Lumo attempted small flights, his wings carrying him a few feet above the floor. Fira began glowing softly with her emotions, projecting feelings of calm and trust. Cinder practiced controlled sparks that danced along the walls without causing harm. Evan watched them proudly, understanding that their growth was not just about strength or skill, it was about learning to trust and care for others. One evening, while the three were resting on the floor, the sky shimmered again. This time, the Queen's presence arrived not as a warning, but as a message. Her projection hovered above the house, her massive eyes studying them carefully. "I have watched you," she said. "Your care has shaped them in ways I could not have imagined. They have learned trust, patience, and love. They have learned courage without force, strength without fear. Humans teach even dragons." Evan listened quietly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. He realized that the lessons he had given the dragons were not about power or fear, they were about understanding, empathy, and connection. He had shown them that being gentle did not mean being weak, and that caring could create bonds stronger than any command or threat. The Queen's voice softened. "You have earned my respect, Evan Corwin. The galaxy will remember this. Other beings may wish to claim power through force, but your example proves that guidance, love, and trust are more powerful than any weapon." The dragons stirred, nudging Evan as if they understood the praise. Lumo chirped happily, Fira purred, and Cinder sent tiny sparks into the air. Evan realized that even a being who ruled the stars recognized the lessons humans could teach. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a quiet rhythm. Evan continued to care for the dragons, teaching them small lessons, playing with them, and watching them grow. The sky above remained vast and alive, full of distant fleets and unseen worlds, but he no longer felt fear. He understood that the bond he had built could withstand the galaxy's tests. One day, the Queen returned in her fleet, not to take the dragons, but to observe their progress. She landed quietly and approached Evan. "They are thriving," she said. "You have given them strength through love, not fear. This is rare. The galaxy has much to learn from humans like you." Evan nodded, humbled. "I only did what felt right," he said. "I wanted them to feel safe and loved." The Queen smiled faintly, a gesture that carried both power and warmth. "That is enough," she said. "You have shown that even the smallest beings, the most fragile, can create change that reaches across the stars. Your example will be remembered." She turned, spreading her massive wings, and ascended to her fleet. The dragons watched her leave, their small bodies glowing softly, and then turned to Evan, chirping and purring in their own ways. Evan knelt among them, stroking their heads and wings. "You've learned so much," he whispered. "But so have I. We've taught each other about trust, courage, and love. That's something no galaxy, no queen, can take away." The dragons responded with small sparks and gentle hums, as if agreeing. They had grown stronger, not just in body or magic, but in understanding the power of connection. Over time, visitors from distant systems came to see Evan and the dragons. Scholars, explorers, and even young cadets traveled to learn from them. Everyone wanted to understand how a human could influence beings so powerful. Evan shared what he could, always emphasizing the importance of care, patience, and respect. The dragons, once tiny and helpless, now played and interacted with visitors, demonstrating that learning and trust could bridge worlds. Evan often reflected on the lessons he had learned. He realized that humans were not the strongest species, nor the fastest or most powerful. But humans had something unique, the ability to love, to care, and to teach through example. Even dragons, creatures of immense power and wisdom, could be shaped by these simple traits. It was a truth that stretched across the stars, unseen by most but undeniable to those who witnessed it. One quiet night, Evan tucked the dragons into bed as he always did. He whispered stories of distant planets, brave explorers, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Lumo, Fira, and Cinder snuggled close, their tiny bodies warm against his chest. He looked up at the sky, filled with twinkling stars, and felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that, no matter what challenges came from the galaxy, the lessons of trust, love, and courage would guide them all. And so, on a quiet planet at the edge of the universe, a human named Evan Corwin had taught dragons, and the galaxy itself, what humans could offer. Not strength, not firepower, not speed or skill, but something far greater: care, patience, and love. These lessons, simple yet powerful, would echo across the stars for generations. Evan closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the dragons beside him. The universe was vast, full of unknown dangers and distant worlds, but he understood one unshakable truth: even in a galaxy ruled by stars and dragons, the heart of a human could teach the most powerful beings the greatest lessons. And in that quiet, extraordinary moment, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, honoring the bond between a human and the dragons he loved.